Hello and welcome to a video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. This ought to be interesting. I started the series Freemasonry and Satanism around October 2013. And the very first video I made was on the Freemasonic Holy Bible. Series number 1. Well, I've decided to redo that one, as it was my first video. It was a little bit embarrassing, maybe, for me to look at it now. But, several books just got my attention and gave me the idea to start this series, trying to figure out what the heck is going on in the world. Obviously something is. This new age, new world order. And I do have some very interesting information to share in this video. Series number 1. And I'm up to 110 on the series now. And I still have a couple other holes to fill in the early issues where I consolidated some of them. But let's talk about the Freemasonic Bible and some of the documentation in it and the symbols in it. It really tells a story, especially when you consider where I am now with my research. So let's just start with the very first page with any pictures in it. We see here some kind of Ark of the Covenant and some kind of room in King Solomon's temple. And then of course we see the Masonic symbol with the sun's rays, I believe, behind it. And of course, seemingly to me, looks like it could be the Tower of Babylon, or some other fixture of the King Solomon's temple, particularly noting the 2 columns in the front. On the bottom, it even gets a little more interesting. The all-seeing eye. Right above the compass. And the words there, the Word of God. So I see the all-seeing eye, as you can see, which we all know is also on the US $1 bill, along with the sun's rays, and along with the pyramid, and along with the words New World Order, said a different way, and Anante, whatever it is on there, mission accomplished. You can look this stuff up. And on the other side of the dollar bill, on the right side, on the little curve of the one, is perched a little owl. There's been a lot of this symbolism on the money. But thinking about this eye, the dollar bill, the pyramid and all that, I thought I'd take a look at something else real quick. I have this other book here, The Pharaohs. This is important stuff when I read the Freemasonic Bible. I put a few markers in the top here just to look at a couple pages. So the all-seeing eye is on the first page with pictures on the Freemasonic Bible. And I thought to myself, where have I seen that before? And of course, the Egyptian hieroglyphics. So starting out with this one picture, we see a snake and the hieroglyphics, also the Ankh, the cross with the circle on top. Apparently the cross T means divine, and the circle on top is supposed to be a snake. And of course there's a big snake on this document, on that artifact. Alright, moving on. My book is falling apart here. Another Egyptian artifact. I keep seeing the circle with the wings on the side. Even the depictions of Nibiru, an incoming planetary body that's supposed to come by every 3,600 years, plus or minus, and cause great destruction on Earth. Maybe they say it caused Noah's flood. But again, we're back to the Egyptian hieroglyphics. But notice the circle on top. And the wings and all the other symbols. I'll talk about them after I show them for a moment. So I see the pharaohs with their long, elongated heads. And down here we see the more symbols of even the bull with the circles on their heads. Next little marker I had here. Looks like a gruesome little creature here on this page. I really can't see too well with the glare. And again, the all-seeing eye here. So what's this I'm saying here? It certainly seems to be something about this ancient peoples who built facilities like this. And the new kingdom, the dominance of thieves. Some really amazing structures. You can go get any of these books on Egyptian hieroglyphics and find a lot of these pictures. So one doesn't have to really wonder too hard why they did 9/11 and went into the Middle East. There seems to be this restoration of this new empire, calling it the return of the Golden Age. And again we see Isis here, Osiris, and even Horus. And again a big bird with holding the Ankh in its hands. Its claws. So what do we have here? And you can see again these creatures, and when I get into aliens, UFOs, this is probably going to be important. But with the elongated heads, this guy looks like Obama. I'm not the first person to say this. So I just went randomly to my bookcase. I have many books on the Egyptians and hieroglyphics. And again, we got the bird and the snake on top of, whose head is this? The Pharaoh Tutankhamun's mummy, Pharaoh of 1345 BC. So 1,340 years before Christ. So if you add 217, you're talking about 33, it's almost 3,400 years ago, this culture existed. So what is going on in the world today? When I go over the Freemasonic Bible, all this will make more sense. But again, you can see the bird head, the lion head, the human head, and the things on top of their head depicting snakes and round balls and ankhs in their hands. And the ankh, again, when I read that in the Freemasonic book Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, the T means divine, the circle means the snake, divine snake. And we can see the snakes are on their heads. So with that said, I had to set the stuff down here. And I get back to this Freemasonic Bible that I've been paying serious attention to the little details. Why is the Word of God and the I on there? And these other symbols. People sign this by the different degrees. I don't want to show you people's names. Here's another one here. Apparently when you're in a Freemasonic lodge, you have to swear on a Bible not to divulge the secrets under threat of death. And they got this 3 candlestick holder thing. And again, the Bible, apparently, the Word of God with the Freemasonic symbol here in this book. The Bible and King Solomon's Temple. I've repeatedly said that the Freemasonic lodges and Illuminati and all the other secret societies are part of these occult groups into this pagan ancient religion. And apparently even King Solomon married Bathsheba from Egypt, the daughter of the king of Egypt, uniting those 2 families and apparently causing him to abandon his original religion, the religion of the Hebrews who were freed from Egypt with Moses and apparently God's help. So he was abandoning the religion of Moses, of God, the 10 Commandments, and he was accused of abandoning that and joining the pagan religion with all those symbols we just saw. And he also married the Egyptian princess, the daughter of the king. FYI, and apparently upon the initial building of the King Solomon's Temple, it was destroyed and rebuilt twice and destroyed twice. I think I read that correctly in this book. I thought it was rebuilt, built once and built twice, and now it's going to be the 3rd time. But the truth is now is it going to be the 4th time? The Bible and King Solomon's Temple in Masonry, it's right there. Nobody can deny this. And when I read what I have read, it gets pretty astounding. I went through it with a fine-tooth comb, highlighting what I wanted to say. Knowing a lot more now, 2017 February, than I knew in September 2013. So I thought I'd probably shed a little bit more light on this Bible for the Freemasons and the forward and introduction and material in this Bible. You know, they want to say it's just a group of people and they're doing beneficial things to their cities and towns in the world. But I think that's hardly the truth, and I believe I can prove that from the material that I've collected, the videos I've already made, the books I've already read, and the material I'm reading now and the other documents I'm finding on the internet. Every time I get a clue to a new piece of evidence, I go look it up. So the picture showing the gorgeous reality of King Solomon's Temple, included in this Masonic Temple Illustrated edition of the Holy Bible, are the result of many years of research, and the architectural plans from which they were made are valued at more than $200,000. So somebody put a lot of effort into this. They represent the first and only accurate interpretation of the scriptural descriptions of that famous edifice of Masonic symbolism. The treatise on the Bible and the King Solomon's Temple and Masonry, which accompanies the pictures, is a distillation of the best work of 2 centuries of Masonic writers. So, a couple centuries, a couple hundred years. That's no small feat. These people are serious. And a couple of the things I highlighted on the pictures that I thought would catch my attention. There's more descriptions here, but I'll just read a few. The plans for King Solomon's Temple, number 2. Number 5, gathering material for the temple. Number 8, house of the Pharaoh's daughter, King Solomon's wife and queen. Like I said, apparently King Solomon, the king of the Hebrew Empire. They don't had the word Jews back then. They didn't have that. But he did marry the Egypt's king's daughter. And this is how they united forces, and they were conquerors. And then 10, another picture here is a porch of judgment. Another one is 13. Israel encamped round about the tabernacle in the wilderness of Sinai, Mount Sinai. Apparently the mountain that Moses went up to get the 10 Commandments, where he saw the bright light or the burning bush, however the descriptions are. Number 15, King Solomon's treasure room. Number 16, the holy place, King Solomon's temple. And number 17, the most holy place. All right, number 18, the bird's eye view of King Solomon's temple and citadel. So some of this stuff is going to be a little bit more interesting, striking information that people probably didn't know. And again, I'm only reading my highlighted portions. So, King Solomon, his personal fortune went freely into the worldwide search for archaeological data. I shouldn't say King Solomon, that would have been Freemason John Wesley Ketchner, archaeologist, Bible student, and lecturer for 30 years. So he spent most of his fortune search of archaeological data, periodic decorative techniques to which to render accurately down to the minute detail. They want to rebuild King Solomon's temple. In 1923, Dr. Ketchner, Kelchner, had assembled all that was needed to erect an exact replica of the temple which had vanished 3,000 years ago. In his New York studio, he surrounded himself with expert draftsmen and capable artists, laying before them models, plans, designs of this, his life's work. As Moses, after receiving the designs of the tabernacle of Israel, called to his aid the cunning master mechanic Bezalel. So apparently God, the glowing light or burning bush, gave Moses the designs for the tabernacle, which was a portable, like a tent, a huge tent with lots of rooms, by the way, where they could worship the design, or the design could bring about his presence. Okay, who was filled with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship. And as Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre, filled with wisdom and understanding and cunning skilled workmen, so did John Wesley Ketchner labor with these experts. So you've got the design for the tabernacle given to Moses. You've got King Solomon wanting to fulfill his father's dream, King David of Israel, to build the temple as a model of the tabernacle temple. And then you got this John Wesley Ketchner in 1923 spending most of his life researching the designs and the materials needed so they can rebuild it now. The focus of a lot of the Freemasonic, Illuminati, secret society organizations, including probably the reason for World War I, World War II, and many more revolutions and chaos bringing about a new world order, a new age, destroying Christianity, discrediting Jesus, and I have the evidence to show on that. And 911, they went in there, they're depopulating the Middle East right now. If you look up images of Greater Israel on Yahoo image site, you'll see the plans for a gigantic Israel encompassing parts of Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and probably much more, eventually the whole world. We're going to see that here. Together they dropped out of the 20th century back in the years 1011 to 104 before Christ, so 3,000 years ago. So these people focused on all the evidence they could find to get the designs and models of the old King Solomon's temple. The difference was only 30 centuries. The paintings and drawings were prepared by the ablest artists of their field in America and Europe. So again, I point out, this was no joke. So you join the Freemasonic Lodge and you get this Bible and you read all this. You know, what are you supposed to think? And a lot of people during the years have come to discover that the Freemasonic organizations are not what they thought, and they withdrew their membership and things like that. Notwithstanding that one incident where this courier named Lance, apparently over in Germany, was riding a horse, was struck by lightning. And you can look it up. And the local authorities found in his pouch plans for causing the French Revolution and other plans for this new world order, new age, taking over the world. And this caused a lot of the officials in those countries over in Europe to ban the Freemasonic lodges, closed them down, and it all had to go underground. Don't believe anything I say, go look this stuff up. So I found this one page here, the Masonic Creed. Again, reading my highlighted portions here. The Bible is the great light in Masonry. Now remember, the Bible consists of two parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And I believe in the New Testament, Jesus' teachings and words, and the Old Testament is the Old Testament. Not the new way of thinking, according to we Christians, but there are people who say the Hebrews, the Jews, are excluded from the teachings in the New Testament, and they're still supposed to adhere to the Old Testament. And with that said, there's some other books they are adhered to, they do adhere to, many Jews. Plus or minus 50% are the ones into this stuff. A good portion of the Jews worldwide have no clue. But a lot of Jews are into this Illuminati Zionism, adhere to books like the Talmud, the Midrash, the Zohar, books I will be going over, books written about these books by famous authors, detailing some of the stuff in there similar to the Old Testament. And it says here under the Masonic belief, man is immortal. I keep saying we are spiritual beings in these biological bodies. Love of man is, next to love of God, man's first duty. That's what Jesus taught. So when you want to talk about a Messiah, who do you want to believe in? Jesus or Zabbatai Zevi, who came up with a parallel set of commandments that are the opposite of the Ten Commandments. In other words, there would be thou shalt kill, thou shalt steal, thou shalt commit adultery, thou shalt covet what other people want, thou shalt bear false witness, thou shalt have many gods, thou shalt worship idols, etc. Thou shalt not honor the Sabbath, Sunday, the day of rest. So it's the opposite. These are the people who, according to Rabbi Marvin Antelman and many others, are the ones who created the swingers groups and orgies, and a lot of these people, I suppose, only control Hollywood and the porn industry. Just saying, you need to determine when you say God, which God are they worshiping? Which gods? We saw the pictures of the pharaohs, And Isis, Osiris, Horus, the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill was represented by the all-seeing eye, the bird head. All right, the Masonic teaching in this book. Masonry teaches man to practice charity, benevolence, to protect chastity, to respect the ties of blood and friendship, to adopt the principles and revere the ordinance of religion, to assist the feeble, guide the blind, raise up the downtrodden, shelter the orphan, guard the altar, support the government, inculcate morality, promote learning, love man, fear God, employ his mercy, and hope for happiness. And I might point this out, and it pops up quite regularly in my studies. But when they talk about mankind, there are many Talmudic Zionists, and if you go on jpost.com, Jerusalem's newspaper in English, you'll see a lot of people say derogatory thing about non-Jews they call goyim or Gentiles. A lot of these people, not all Jewish people, believe that the rest of us who are non-Jewish, are nothing more than animals. So when they say to love your fellow man, they don't mean love all the animals, we non-Jews. From what I understand, how they rationalize this. All right, moving on. The meaning of Masonry. Another page here. In all the rich symbolism of ancient craft masonry, two symbols or symbolic themes predominate. One is the search for light. The other is the labor of building. The source of light is the Holy Bible. Again, Old Testament, New Testament. And the grand representation of the builder's art is King Solomon's temple. So the focus is King Solomon's temple, and that's not part of the religion that we should be worshiping or desiring to replicate in Christianity. And I did in my Encyclopedia Judaica video recently on Jesus that was in the Encyclopedia Judaica. The stuff in the Judaical Encyclopedia was very detrimental, very insulting, non-respectful at the minimum. For a third of the world's people or more, Christianity. We all know that Christianity is being discredited and has been discredited, as was said by the communists in congressional hearings in the early 1920s and 1930s, that they would infiltrate the religious organizations to discredit them. As part of Karl Marx, the Communist Manifesto documents, which I will be going over, they have to do away with all religious belief, all families' values. The state will have ownership of your children and all of your life. A lot of people are aware of these prophecies, these things that are said to come, and we can certainly see a lot of this stuff on YouTube videos by some very serious, talented researchers. You have to use your brain and watch these things, take notes, do some research, and make up your own mind. It says it right here. Until at last, this is a Freemason, a new initiate, until he finds himself portraying the character of the greatest of all legendary builders, the master architect of King Solomon's temple. The meaning of Masonry. Light is revealed, and the sacred source of all light is clearly indicated by the search for complete illumination must be eternal. Light is revealed, and the sacred source of all light is clearly indicated, but the search for complete illumination must be eternal. So I've been going over the Rosicrucians, the initiates, initiation, secret doctrine, Helena Blavatsky, morals and dogma, Albert Pike, and Zionist issue, Protocols of Zion, Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book, To Eliminate the Opaque, your belief in God, your desire to pray and talk to God. PhD, Henry Macau, Canadian Jewish author, The Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world, and so many more books I've read and made videos on. So when I'm reading this, I'm a little bit more, and no pun intended, or is there, but I'm a little more illuminated that I understand what's being said in this book. The temple in the Masonic ritual is almost but not quite completed. The allegory rises from a physical to a spiritual temple. A house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Another paragraph here highlighted the tradition of Solomon. It was natural also that they should acknowledge a particular attraction for the most famous and glorious of all building enterprises, King Solomon's temple and citadel. Interest and attraction for the wonderful structure on Mount Moriah have increased rather than diminished during the 600 and more years of recorded Masonic history. So 600 plus or minus years. This has been the focus of Masonic history, as it says in this book. So if anybody thinks this New Age and New World Order and the craziness with wars and mayhem going on in Syria right now, and apparently Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu speaking of more, forgetting the word here, but restrictions to Iran, I'll think of it. But anyways, they're talking negatively about Iran, so I suspect after they get done with Syria, Iran will be next. I think that's the focus of what I meant, and Donald Trump made no bones about it. And Iran will never be able to build nuclear weapons. But I am reminded of the 30 or 40 nukes Israel has, and apparently something called the Samson option. Look these things up, I say, don't believe me. That if the world tries to stop them in this new enterprise we're reading about in this book, rebuilding King Solomon's temple, they'll let loose these nukes and take the major cities of the world down, so take the whole world down in eternal flames. This is what we're dealing with how serious these people are about bringing about. You saw the pictures of the Egyptian pharaohs and all those temples. These people think it's some kind of divine thing they're supposed to do. I don't think it would be the God who gave Moses the 10 Commandments that would want this. But I will be going over more material from the Kabbalah books, Secret Doctrine, and other religions of the Hebrews in the Encyclopedia Judaica, as well as many other books, even on the UFO alien thing with reptilians and greys, which I think has everything to do with these ancient peoples, and other things, psychic research that I'm doing, and several more books on conspiracy theories by famous authors. I've decided in 2017 I will continue to pursue the research and add another year's collection of videos and books I've read to my list. Like I said, I'm up to 110. But back to this here. So they want to build King Solomon's temple. 911 was opened the door and let the people of the world, like the United States, to accept that the Middle East, the leaders were all evil, and that the United States could go attack them. Let's not forget what Prime Minister Sharon said many years ago. You can look this up. In a heated argument in his Congress, Prime Minister Sharon of Israel. Don't worry about the USA, we control the USA. And if you just look up those words, don't worry about the USA, we control the USA, Prime Minister Sharon, you'll find many web pages that detail the whole conversation. Then look up while you're at it, Benjamin Netanyahu in his speech in Fink's Bar, and then just ponder back and go watch the Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu talk they had, or they were on podium speaking to America on the news, and what they were saying, and Benjamin Netanyahu complicated Trump that he's going to be the greatest, he's the best friend of Israel, and Trump said to Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's the best friend of the United States. So we have something interesting looming. We see that George Bush with 9/11 gave us almost 8 years of intense wars and overthrowing the nations all over the Middle East. Obama, for 8 years, seems to have carried out the same plans. and it's looking like President Donald Trump will continue those plans, which is the fulfillment of what's in this book, is what I'm trying to say. All right, back to the book. Made a little change in location. Still trying to get adjusted to my new residence and where I might want to make videos. All right, the tabernacle in the wilderness, page 3. A thorough understanding of the details of the primitive tabernacle of Israel is essential to grasp fully the fundamental principles involved in the construction of King Solomon's temple. I misspoke a couple sentences ago. I said when Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump were speaking to the world on TV, they were complimenting each other. I thought I said complicated when I reviewed the video. It's funny how the mind works. So do pardon me for my mistakes, which I'm sure I make a lot of. But we're having a conversation and pondering things, which is what I'm trying to do. The intimate knowledge of the tabernacle's contents and their relation to one another is necessary to comprehend the ritualistic system developed by Solomon and his priest. So like I said, King Solomon's temple was designed after the tabernacle, which was given to Moses by this being, God, bright light, whatever. A lot of people have different perceptions of what and who God is. And it is a ritualistic, divine thing that they do. And I did notice some things in here that were a tad bit disturbing. We'll get to that. The study of the ceremonies, here's one of the disturbing things, the sacrificial offerings and the priestly ministering of the tabernacle will reveal a great spiritual mystery of the indwelling God as made manifest by Moses during the sojourn in the wilderness. So when Moses went up to the mountain to talk to God, what's that have to do with today? What's that have to do with the New Age and the New World Order? With all the Egyptian symbolism, the ancient religion of the pharaohs, where all the people were slaves. Think about that. I don't believe that the God I believe in would be designing the world that way. That these Hebrews were God-selected people, and everybody else were born to serve them, and were not humans with souls, but animals. I don't believe that. And I don't think a lot of people believe that. All right, then another page 4 here, Master Builders. Moses, during his prolonged stay of 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai, so I say a lot of things, and people might wonder where I get them from. I read books. So he did go up there for 40 days and 40 nights. Appears to have visualized the form of which the tabernacle should take. So he was up there for quite a while, over a month. And apparently God gave him designs for a tabernacle. And I have a thought on that. And I'm not the one to create this thought. I've read about it in other books. But apparently in ancient documentation, these clouds, or maybe spacecraft, were following the Hebrews out of Egypt and would land every night, and they built the tabernacle so that these beings could go inside these tented areas and be undisturbed. So, you know, things like the Anunnaki come to my mind, and reptilian beings. So I know we're spiritual beings in these biological bodies. That's not in dispute in my mind. I've read too many books. But and in the Bible it does say that there were these beings, sons of God found the women fair, and then there were giants and watchers. These are all biblical beings. And we all know about angels and demons and gray aliens and reptilians and Palladians and pixies, as according to Barbara Manasek in the books on the Palladians and other stuff I've gone over. So apparently that's what I think the tabernacles were for these beings to go inside to be unmolested and not seen. And I suppose if they looked like reptilian beings or were very strange looking beings, they wouldn't want to be seen. So it just also brings us to what's going on in the world today. Makes one wonder and ponder. The subsequent building of the tabernacle, the system of worship adopted, and the structure of government developed by Moses under divine guidance have inspired his race and impressed the whole of mankind. It's in this Freemasonic Bible. Probably the contents of the Bible are actually the Old Testament and New Testament, hopefully without any changes, but I haven't found any alterations yet, except for the insertion of this first numerous amount of pages and pictures, which is what I'm going to go over now. Alright, Moses chose as his chief architect Bezalel, a direct descendant of Terah, one of the master builders of Ur and of the Chaldeans, and as a chief assistant Aholab, also a direct descendant of Terah, and by marriage of the line of Tubal-Cain. So I'm reading that going, Tubal-Cain, wait a minute. In the Bible, the first murder was when Cain slew Abel. If you don't know the story, I'll be quick about it. Apparently, the first child of Adam and Eve, or if you read the Rosicrucian material, Eve and Satan, Sataniel, their son was Cain, and then according to the Rosicrucian, this divine being, Satan, Sataniel, abandoned Eve, and his son Cain, or Adam and Eve had Cain, depending on which book you read. Other versions of this I've noticed. They had a second son because God felt sorry for Eve that Satan had left, according to the Rosicrucians. The biblical term of Adam and Eve is a little different. But then nevertheless, they had a second son, Abel, and the first son, Cain, was jealous of Abel and slew him. Cain slew Abel. A lot of people have heard that. And then, of course, Adam and Eve had a third son called Seth. So the lineages of we humans either come from the descendants of Cain or the descendants of Seth. And, of course, if you believe in the Rosicrucian version, Adam and Eve were human and human, but the first child, Cain, was from Eve and Sataniel, which was human and divine God. So there would be a different DNA in the lineages of Cain and the lineages of Adam and Eve, human and human, the lineages of Seth. FYI, just stuff I think about when I'm reading. So they built the tabernacle, and apparently, of course, later on, King Solomon wanted to fulfill his father, King David's wishes and build King Solomon's temple after the design of the tabernacles that were given to Moses, inspired by these divine beings or by God, according to their books. Sorry to ramble on. Alright, Tubal-Cain. Traditionally the first instructor of the artifices in brass and iron, Bezalel was unusually endowed with the Spirit of God in wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. These three outstanding geniuses gave to the world the most beautiful and magnificent religious structure ever conceived and erected for a nomadic people. So people who were nomadic were known to travel around, like the American Indian tribes. Alright, I'm skipping a couple headlines, materials for the tabernacle, value of the materials, but I'm going to read a little bit from the materials, how the materials were acquired. The Israelites, a nomadic tribe roaming about through Chaldea, Assyria, and Canaan, So the land of the Palestines was initially called Canaan and later became Palestine, and of course now through deception and manipulation of the Illuminati, Rothschilds, and the Balfour Agreement, Israel has most of the land. And of course the new president, Donald Trump, hasn't even been president too many weeks, and it's already in the headlines of the news that he approves of or is planning to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv, 40 miles away, into Jerusalem, which will probably be part of evicting even more Palestinians and putting the final touches on the plans to rebuild the new temple. Something prophesied that they'll be ruling the world from Mount Zion and Jerusalem, bringing about the New Age and New World Order. Christianity will be destroyed. They've been destroying the Arabs' religion, Islam, the Islamists, Muhammadites. So all this is set. And I'm reading this book and I'm finding some collaborating information. Finally located in the land of Goshen in Egypt, naturally accumulating wealth by trading with the natives through whose countries they pass. So these nomadic Hebrews back then were accumulating a lot of wealth, and of course they've been accumulating a lot of wealth since 1913 when they took over the Federal Reserve in the United States. And even back in the 1800s when they took over the money supply in Germany, they did the same thing. And they seem to be able to crash the system whenever they want and take everything that everybody else has accumulated. Not too nice. So they accumulated a lot of wealth in their nomadic travelings. But possibly the greatest wealth was acquired just before they left Egypt, when we are told they spoiled the Egyptians. Well, I didn't know about that. So what are they saying here? When they were Egypt was suffering all those plagues. They suffered from, I guess, not agreeing with God, plagues and other things. Apparently the Hebrews took a lot of spoils, booty, gold, silver, everything they could get from the Egyptians. Things I didn't know. Page 5, the architecture of the tabernacle. The tabernacle, tent, and portable temple, which I said possibly could be for some kind of alien creature, which were described as some kind of clouds following the Hebrews as they were leaving Egypt, being so constructed that it could be readily taken down, moved from place to place, and erected at will, was especially adapted to the needs of the nomadic people. The tabernacle consisted of an oblong or rectangular, called the court, in the rear half of which was the tent or covering of the sanctuary. Under this tent, the holy and most holy places were defined by partitions of boards and pillars securely joined by means of rods, rings, etc. So when they were departing from Egypt, making their way to the land of Canaan, who apparently this God says, I'm giving you this land, you have to destroy these Canaanites, which turned out to be giants. Another story for another day. They had this tabernacle, which might be for these divine beings to stay in at night when they landed their craft. Like I said, I'm not the first person to theorize that. In the thought of the ever-present and indwelling God, typifying the encampment of the angels of the Lord around about them that fear him. Angels of the Lord. So did the people, the Hebrews back then, if there were some craft following them, instructed them to build tabernacles, did they think that these people and these craft were angels of the Lord? All right, page 6. I hope you're finding this interesting. The altar of burnt offering. Here we go. The altar of burnt offering was the instrument used for the purpose of reconciling man with his maker. So I'm hoping they didn't burn humans. It's said that these reptilian creatures eat human flesh. I know I say some crazy things, but my research has been quite eclectic. I've been reading books about everything you can imagine, trying to figure out some simple things. But this next sentence I read may vindicate what I just said. But you decide. Listen to this. The pots, shovels, and basins. This was for burnt offerings. And flesh hooks. That's what it says here. Flesh hooks. Flesh hooks. I read that and I got a little startled. Were they burning humans? Fire pans, as well as all the other vessels or utensils necessary to the service of the altar, were made of brass. Pots, shovels, basins, and flesh hooks. So whatever they were sacrificing was serious business. The brazier laver. Brazen laver. L-E-V-E-R. The lever consisted of a large bowl or fountain which held fresh water used by the priest in the services. It stood in front or pool as a base to catch the waste water. Listen to this. Here the sacrifices were washed, and the priest cleansed before entering the tabernacle. So if they were sacrificing humans, I'm hoping not, but they had this gigantic pot of water, and they would wash the sacrifices, and that's what it says here. I'm completely blinded by the sun. I can't see what I showed you. Moving on here. That was page 6, though, by the way. Well, I hope they weren't sacrificing humans, although it does seem like that is happening these days with all this satanic symbolism in movies, TV shows, and 911 and world wars and overthrowing the countries in the Middle East and this apparent serpent satanic worship. They call it burnt offerings, or even the Jews, when they say there were 6 million killed in Germany, they called it a Holocaust, trying to fulfill some prophecy of a burnt offering. So it does seem that humans are involved somewhere in this. And even on the Talmud and other books and videos I've been watching and books I've been reading, they do plan, these evil people, not all Jewish people, and it does involve other people who are not even Jewish, and apparently most of the people who people believe today are Jewish are not. They're Ashkenazis from Khazaria, and in Revelation 9 in the Bible it clearly says Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. Look it up and read it. So we'll talk about the holy place on page 7. The entrance gate consisted of a beautiful tapestry of blue, purple, and scarlet fabric, gorgeously embroidered with cherubim in pure gold. So little human beings with wings were embroidered on these temples that was dedicated to this divine God. The tapestry was hung upon 5 pillars of wood, overlaid with gold, having beautiful capitals of silver and sockets of brass. Next page talks about the holy place contained 3 articles of furniture: the altar of incense, which stood in the center, the golden candlestick with all its vassals, which stood on the left side center, and a table of showbread with its dishes, spoons, covers, bowls, which stood at the right side center. The golden candlestick. The golden candlestick was made of pure gold. They're describing things in this King Solomon's temple. Of beaten work with a central shaft ornamented with knobs, flowers, and bowls. There were 6 branches going out of its sides. 3 branches out on one side and 3 out of the other. That would probably be the menorah, the 7 candlestick thing we now see displayed during Christmas time. No longer do we see Merry Christmas or references to Jesus and that kind of stuff. A friend of mine just pointed out that, there were references to Merry Christmas and celebrate the season. But largely I saw that in rural areas going through the Sun Belt, through Georgia and South Carolina, when I traveled to Florida this holiday season. So Christmas isn't wiped out everywhere. But in the major cities and major shopping centers, it seemed to be, to me, in your downtown city decorations, it seemed to have disappeared from there. References specifically to Christmas. But I did see these 7 candlesticks in a lot of places. Just to clarify, FYI. Alright, I'm back on the parkway. Still trying to find a quiet spot to make videos since I relocated my residence. But while I was doing the video a few moments ago, my girlfriend kept pointing out that she didn't believe cities and businesses and stuff like that, that they were trying to stop any display of religious symbolism, i.e. Christmas. It took me a second to go on the computer and show her a plethora of evidence. One is Christmas symbols back on display in Oklahoma City office. 2 employees who claim they were forced to remove Christian-themed decorations from their office and break room put the items back on display while legal battle continued over whether the employees' rights were violated. My point that I've been trying to make is that it seems in this #1 electronic store during Christmas time, with the 7 candlestick on the front glass when you walked into the store, I stopped and took pictures and looked around. I didn't see any Merry Christmas. I didn't see anything like that. So I'm aware there has been this shuffle, this propaganda, this plan. It's not a conspiracy. You can go on the internet and find tons of information all over the country of people complaining about this, that they're trying to erase Christmas, Jesus, from our minds. It's part of this social change, this new age and new world order. And I think it has everything to do with this information here from my research. So I'll continue to read from the Bible, the Freemasonic Edition. And hopefully you can bear with the noise. When I hear a car coming, I'll stop speaking for a second. Here we go. The most holy place. It contained the Ark of the Covenant, in which were the 2 tables of stone. Probably the 2 tablets given to Moses when he came down the mountain. The 10 Commandments. This place, the Holy of Holies, the most sacred portion of the divinely appointed structure, was surrounded on 3 sides by highly polished walls of pure gold. The veil of a fine twined linen in blue, purple, and scarlet, richly embroidered, and ornamented the figures of cherubim in gold. Again, we have little human characters with wings, cherubim. What are these cherubim? Angels? Demons? Only reading my highlighted portions. The reflection of these brilliant hues and of the cherubim on the walls of polished gold must have produced a weird, startling, awe-inspiring, and overpowering effect upon all those who were ordained to enter this most sacred place. Within this enclosure there was but 1 article of furniture, and its contents, that is, the Ark of the Covenant containing the testimony. So does it contain more than the 10 Commandments? Apparently so. Remember the Indiana Jones movie? They opened the Ark and the spiritual power came out and killed everybody, except for Indiana and his girlfriend who were blindfolded. Seems to be more to these movies than people know. The Ark of the Covenant, another title here. The Ark of the Covenant was an ark or chest. Upon each end, so on top of this chest was a seat. Upon each end of this mercy seat were cherubim. So they have these cherubim. There's a picture here, I'll show it. Made of pure beaten gold. So they had these little human beings with wings made out of pure gold. These cherubim stretched forth their wings so high as to cover the mercy seat, their faces being inward towards the mercy seat. In this ark or chest, and directly underneath the mercy seat, was the testimony or 10 commandments upon 2 tablets of stone. The Ark of the Covenant, thus fittingly enshrined, was the only piece of furniture in the most holy place. It was visited but once each year by the high priest on the Day of Atonement to make atonement for the sins of the people. This was the most solemn ceremony of the Hebrew worship. All right, moving on. King Solomon's Temple and Citadel. The comprehensiveness of the tabernacle, its hidden grandeur and its mysterious splendor appealed to David to such an extent, that would be King David of the Hebrews, that he longed to build with the tabernacle as a model, just as I explained earlier, a permanent temple dedicated to the worship of the true God. David loved the tabernacle as the house of the Lord. Well, I'm finding out the Parkway's too busy on Friday. He desired to dwell in its courts forever, that he might behold the glory of God, make manifest his eternal presence, and sing his praise. So a lot of people don't believe in God. They want to destroy Christianity. They're trying to destroy, if they haven't already, much of the Islamic people, their lands, their religion. They're depopulating the area. They're forcing these displaced people, all of the Arabs, to in the middle of the night into Europe, the United States. You look that up on the internet. UPS planes converted to passenger planes, flying into New York, and etc. People in Philadelphia, small towns, complaining. All this is related to this. And they're serious about this. David had the tabernacle in mind when he prepared plans and patterns for the permanent temple to be erected at Mount Moriah, the most sacred spot on earth. So now you know why Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have made deals to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I guess the remaining Palestinians will have to say goodbye, maybe to their very lives. Maybe they'll be deported to the United States, furthering our economic problems. Just saying, it is what it is. The tabernacle was the pattern which guided the master builders in the construction of King Solomon's temple, as well as the priest in its ritualistic services. Completed about 1005 BC, so 1,000 years before Jesus came, according to received chronology. And for those people who don't believe that Jesus came, remember the calendars are dated this way, 1005 BC, before Christ. And we're in 2017, years after Jesus was born. And all this psychic research and everything I've investigated, Helena Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, Edgar Cayce, and so much more, those psychics, those people who can peer into the other realm, don't deny that Jesus existed. FYI. Alright, see if I can get some more of this video done. A little complicated because of the different noises. Location of the temple. Mount Moriah in the days of Abraham was one of the hills in the vicinity of Salem, the one chosen by Abraham, upon which to sacrifice his only son. So the biblical story of God testing Abraham said, you have to kill your son. And apparently Abraham was going to comply. And apparently God stopped him before he did it and said, you have proved yourself. I know for a lot of us people who are Christians, and some of the stuff in the Old Testament is a bit confusing. Or is it? So sacrifice his only son, Isaac, as a burnt offering. Remember we talked about burnt offerings earlier? And I was hoping it wasn't humans. Well, here it's definitely a human. Unto the Lord. So they were sacrifice his only son, Isaac, as a burnt offering unto the Lord. These are the people who control our world right now, by the way. In the days of King David, who subdued the Jebusites, it became a part of the city named Jerusalem. So I guess this is how Jerusalem came about. It is 14.5 miles from Jordan, 15 miles from the Salt Sea, and 41 miles from the Mediterranean. And remember, they're moving the American embassy, USA embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is about 40 miles from Jerusalem on the coastline. FYI, also becoming the #1 hotspot for gay people to vacation. Again, a little bit strange. The location was not the most desirable one upon which to erect a temple, but was chosen by Solomon because of its sacred associations. It was fitting that the great temple to be dedicated to the God of his fathers, the God of his fathers. I don't think it's the God who made me and all these trees behind me and my spirit soul, where we go back to, as Jesus said, in my Father's kingdom there are many mansions, should be erected upon the very spot where Abraham made manifest that faith in him which was accepted ever after by the children of Israel and the world. So we can see what's written here in this Freemasonic Bible. These preface, not actually part of the Bible, by the way. Just some pages in here to make it the Freemasonic Bible. On this spot also where Abraham offered Isaac, David made an acceptable offering to the Lord, and by faith saved Jerusalem from destruction. David no doubt realized the significance of the name given to the mount by Abraham, Jehovah sees. And ever after the children of Abraham found consolidation in the thought, in the mount of Jehovah he will be seen. In the mount of Jehovah. So they do plan on rebuilding this new King Solomon's temple. This is what 9/11 was all about. World War I, World War II, these revolutions. Inch by inch they gain more control. These economic depressions, recessions, they control the money. They cut off the money supply. People can't pay their bills. They acquire all these lands and properties and businesses. Then they turn a faucet back on and everything prospers for a while. It grows, then they take. It grows, then they take. It's the way I see it. I got plenty of books on these topics, which we will go over. But in the meantime, we're talking about this Solomon, in deciding to erect a temple upon this sacred spot, fulfilled the wishes of his father, King David, and of all in whose breast these sentiments were cherished. Beautiful the situation, and joy of the whole earth. Well, with all these wars and murders, I can't say there's a lot of joy to the Arabs over there. And the economic destruction and things planned for the future. Even with Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, planning on moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And the Palestinians have already complained and said this will not help bring about a two-state system. But I don't think a two-state system has ever been planned. This stuff's ancient, and I think what's going on now is ancient. How the temple materials were acquired. King David, one of the world's greatest generals and statesmen, founded an imperial dominion. So, like how they write these words and exemplify this King David. And I said before, the Freemasonic lodges are a derivative from the Zionist Illuminati Hebrew types, and I suspect they're into a more satanic religion, Satanism, not to be confused with a lot of Jewish people writing books, and I've purchased more of them, who are opposed to this Zionism and think these secret societies are bad for humanity. Forget what the end result is supposed to be. The complete and utter destruction and death of all Gentiles, non-Jews. Read the Protocols of Zion. Read Rabbi Marvin Anthelman's book, To Eliminate the Opaque. Read Henry McCall, PhD, Canadian author, Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World. The Bloody Zion, the video I made. The American Jew Moves to Israel, Jack Bernstein, and so many more books I've read and videos I've made, including the stuff I've been going over in the Encyclopedia Judaica. A mountain of information that is blowing me away, especially when I looked up Jesus and what they had to say about that. Go watch my video. So he was the greatest general and statesman, founded an imperial dominion which therefore had not been realized, though it had been promised to Abraham. David became king on the scale, and the great sovereigns demanding and receiving tribute. So he was getting 10% from everybody on the world that he controlled, or more. And forming alliances which enabled him to control the great trade route, of which Jerusalem was the center. So Jerusalem, they plan on Jerusalem, I think, being the politically capital of the world, and Tel Aviv will be the financial capital of the world, or vice versa. Bringing back this golden age for these people, at the expense of the rest of us. Yet during the turmoil and struggles attending his rise to supremacy, he never ceased to make preparations for carrying out his one ambition, that of erecting a temple to the worship of God. And again, I ask, which God? To my eyes, Jesus was the Messiah. He preached, treat other men how you want to be treated. And this other Messiah, Sabbat and Ziva, and these other religions that they have now, they preach that Jesus and God are the evil ones, and that Lucifer and Satan and all these other people are the actual good ones. And I was even watching a video where this guy was having an interview on YouTube who had written a book, Why He Thought Pedophilia Should Be Legal, as young as 4 years old. He said, because 4-year-olds can understand how to say yes and no, so you can tell if they like something or don't. So it should be legal because it'll be consenting if they don't say no. The perversion in our world is just off the top to me. I'd think I'd have drugged that man right out of that studio down to the prison. But upon being asked more questions, he finally ripped off his microphone and said, I'm not answering any more questions, and stormed out of the meeting on that YouTube video. You can just look up pedophilia on YouTube, watch some of the videos. A lot of people are sticking their necks out by exposing this stuff, rampant by it. It's everywhere in the political circles and elite circles. A huge industry, abducting young children and shipping them all over the world for these services. Just saying, these are the people who control our world. These are the Freemasons, and I'm certain all the lower level Freemasons don't even have a clue. And many have found out certain bad things and have left the Freemasons. And many people on YouTube have exposed the goings-on in the Illuminati. There's plenty of information out there. But I read books, I just try to put two and two together and try to understand why. And all I can come to the conclusion is there really are some evil forces out there. And they do hate humanity. Yet during the turmoil and struggles attending his rise to supremacy, King David, he never ceased to make preparations for carrying out his ambition, that of erecting the temple to worship of God. Moving on, another highlighted paragraph. In addition to the sums of gold, 7,000 talents of silver, all of which he carefully tabulated and dedicated to the Lord in the presence of the fathers and princes of the tribes of Israel, who stood in awe silence before their venerable and God-fearing sovereign, in his final and supreme effort to arouse his hearers to respond to contributions of their own. So even King David contributed a ton of money towards the building of the first King Solomon's temple, which was to make a copy of the tabernacle that was described to Moses when he was up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights by this being that he called God. It's complicated. What are we to think? David shouted, "Who is then willing to consecrate his service this day unto the Lord?" So he was rallying everybody up to donate more money to build King Solomon's temple 3,000 years ago or more. Hiram, king of Tyre, a friend of David, gave Solomon cedar. Oh. So neighboring kings, like king of Tyre, Hiram, gave Solomon cedar, algum, fir trees, according to all of Solomon's needs. That would be the son of King David, who died not seeing his temple built. Great stones, granite. So a huge point of what I'm trying to say here. This effort, their desire to fulfill this stuff, has not diminished. And I'm not trying to be a preacher. I'm saying what we are dealing with, there are forces that are bent on destroying the rest of us, enslaving people, bringing about a new age, a new world order. Go look up and see what Benjamin Netanyahu said in Fink's Bar. Just key those in there. Or Prime Minister Sharon, don't worry about the USA, we control the USA. Watch some of my videos. Don't believe me, take notes, go do what I did, go buy the books, go look up the documents, read them. Become convinced. If there's a bad day looming, and it gets worse every day to some people. It may not hit you or me yet. Of course, I've been affected a little bit. 12, 13 years ago, I had a house, a condo, land in Maine, money, boat, motorcycles. But as like a lot of other people, things kept getting bad, and I was selling off my resources to survive. Thank God for that. These people don't want the non-them, the lowly worker, to live very well. They're communists. Go look how they treat people in Africa in the gold mines and diamond mines, and what they have planned for this world agricultural system. All the citizens will be slaved. Think of the movie Hunger Games. These people are telling us. They're laughing about it. All right, so reading more from this book. Abundant preparations of his father for the building of the temple, Solomon having been carefully nurtured by his God-fearing queen mother, get this, had grown into a young man of great mental vigor. Having been schooled under the great masters of the times, reared into one of the richest and most brilliant courts of the then known world, he was preeminently gifted for the stupendous task before him and undertook with enthusiasm to carry it on. The secret of Solomon's success is faithfully portrayed in his request at the time the Lord appointed him in a dream. So he received a message in a dream from the Lord. All these people who write all these books, like Helena Blavatsky, Albert Pike, Annie Besant, Alice Bailey, and many others have these visions and dreams. Even Nikola Tesla had visions and dreams. Having been schooled under the greatest masters of the time, reared in one of the richest and most brilliant courts. So he had a preeminently gifted for this stupendous task. The secret of Solomon's success is faithfully portrayed in his request at the time the Lord appeared to him in a dream. So the Lord appeared to him in a dream. That's what's written here. This is the Freemasonic Bible. This is the story, the material that they read. And they swear under threat of death not to tell the rest of us the truth when they get initiated. And the goings on and what they learn. And anyways, asked what he, the Lord, should give him. So the Lord appeared to him in a dream and asked him what he wanted. Solomon's request was for an understanding heart, and that he might discern between good and evil, and that he might know how to walk before his people. This submission to God, this desire to have God made manifest through him, the righteousness of God, was the first indication of his future greatness. He gathered about him the wonders of nature, both of animal and vegetable life, drew from them the secrets of their existence, and learned that God was made manifest in the heavens above and in the earth beneath, and that God was all and in all. Sounds like the Kabbalah. He soon set about to fulfill the wishes of his father and to glorify the God in his dreams, of his dream, by creating a temple, monumental in design, exceedingly magnificent, and peculiarly fitted to amplify the mysteries of godliness. He took counsel with his wise men, held conference with his allies, and sought out master builders from all great nations. Thus equipped, he laid the foundation and carried to completion the temple, not only as a place for worship, but as a structure of dazzling architectural glory. And again, I say, and I know I'm repeating myself, if people don't believe this is serious, consider 9/11. Consider what happened after 9/11. Consider stuff you can go look up on the internet, people who talk about what happened. These elites, the people who control the military, control the money, the politics, they had selected individuals with escorts, military escorts, go into the Iraqi museum and other places, and they were after artifacts. What were they after? They're always announcing new discoveries. While all this chaos and anarchy is going on in the Middle East, how do they have time to do all these digs? In one city that was destroyed right on the Iraq border, I was watching a video the other day. From a satellite, some investigators were using Google, and they found these gigantic round holes. Not from bombshells, the city had been bombed to smithereens, but man-made dug holes. And then they found out later on that there were ancient cities underneath. So what's the real purpose of why they're depopulating the area and all these plans for this new age and new world order? We know, I just showed the stuff from the Egyptian hieroglyphics, and I have more supporting material. The symbols are everywhere. The all-seeing eye on the dollar bill. And Helena Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, creating the Theosophitical Society, another religious group, creating the Lucifer magazine with Lucifer Publishing Company. You don't have to be a genius to figure this out. Workmen at the temple, another page here, 14. Hiram of Tyre, the principal architect and engineer, was of mixed race. He was a widow's son in the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre. Cunningly, a man richly endowed by nature and wisdom and knowledge, he was preeminently fitted for the almost supernatural task. Just reading my highlighted portions. over this great army of workers in order to obtain the greatest efficiency and results, he set 3,600 overseers. So they had 3,600 overseers, just managers, besides the chief of his officers, which were over all the work. Solomon, having married the daughter of Egypt's king, here we go, thus cemented his alliance with that powerful monarch, and having at the same time a workable trade pact with the Phoenicians, drew from these nations skilled workmen to assist his already well-trained and formidable force. So he married the Bathsheba from Egypt. That's part of where he turned from the religion of his fathers. Architecture of the temple, page 15. The assemblage of the world's greatest architectural genius at Jerusalem, and the amassed store of materials of gold, silver, brass, iron, granite, marble, together with the precious stones and costly woods and fabrics brought from foreign shores, resulted in a structure distinctive in design, gigantic in proportion, glorious in its embellishments, the like of which Israel and the people of that day had never before seen.